My father is really my role model. My mother is equally amazing in her own way, taught me to make things happen and not let anything stop me. So
First hustle that you had?
the snap bracelet business. A bunch, and we would just sell it in the school. We got a truck, went around picking up couches, and then the first few days of school we just put them all out on the lawn. I learned my lesson that you need really good margins. It's really like Craigslist before people use Craigslist. Now, if I had a great mentor, or someone who had to take it from where it was to something bigger, well, I got a Fulbright fellowship to Argentina, an internship at the Inter-American Development Bank. Everything just bottomed out overnight. There was this massive devaluation. Whenever there's change, there's so many opportunities. The big companies are just putting out fires. They're all distracted.
Yeah.
So if you're a small, lean organization, you have a longer runway. I didn't want to pursue a life as an economist. A lot of the nonprofits in Argentina had no money because of the devaluation, and the dollar was automatic, overnight, 3-4 times more powerful.
Yep.
And the three best organizations go to the US, raise as much money as we can. Create an organization called Help Argentina, outsourced administrative arm that makes donors feel secure that the donations are going to a good organization. We went out and we made sure these projects were doing great work. The beginning was really hard. I was 21 years old. People didn't take me that seriously. They thought I'd get up and leave. Got a bit of a lucky break, and we brought that money down and we put it to good use. That gave us credibility. I was mugged a few times with knives, felt like an imposter. I got into both and I went to Stanford. Got eBay to let me work with one of their teams. Coming up with a company that we call Cash Cow, and it was for the Indian market. PayPal sort of business for India. Biggest thing that made it too early, there weren't enough vendors yet selling things. Luckily didn't lose a lot of any money of investors, put our own money in to do the market research. We knew things were not in a good place, so we didn't raise any money. A company called Crew, Q-R-E-W. We're thinking, how do you gamify basically doing good stuff? So we built a whole gamified platform. People run competitions, it's who does the most good. I raised about $1 million, but it wasn't a good market. A performance management system that was gamified and social. Our big customer that came on was Peugeot. Because we pivoted so much, the team wasn't that excited about it. So they asked if they would buy it. But it was just enough to get most of the money back to our investors. All our investors were like, next time we'll invest in you. Not as autonomous as you think you are. 4.0 schools, which was similarly trying to shake things up in K-12 education in the US. How do you teach entrepreneurship? I think startup incubators are where the best teaching of it are happening. No, if you talk to educators, what is education? It's teaching subjects. The Spike Lab is, how do you teach this to high schoolers? If you get it then, you get it for life. You can teach these things. Way more time, helping them find what sparks that passion for them, and let them pursue it and explore it and fail and make things in the world that make them feel like they matter. Coming up with an idea, making it real, which is hard, really hard. Getting people to buy it or use it or attend an event. So we actually started in Taiwan. See all that negativity into something really positive. These schools want kids who have found purpose in life, who will pursue and do uncommon, extraordinary things. We're like a one-on-one entrepreneur coaching for high schoolers, and we help them come up with their spike. We have the best coaches. They're all experienced entrepreneurs like me. Incubator would, a structured entrepreneurship curriculum, but that's I took everything I've been doing, developed a sense of purpose in people. We bundled that all together into something that's age appropriate, and it's working. Some of them are very business oriented kids, and that's their passion, but a lot of them are more social ventures. Or my co-founder lives in Taiwan, Hong Kong. We're starting to expand in China, and then the US. We've had 77 students total, almost 3 years now. More important, to see that spark and the sense of confidence, self-worth go up, and that comes from a sense of purpose. So I'm self-funding it. I do not want, at least now, to raise teenagers pick what they want to focus on. And you trust them that they're gonna be serious and explore it. Go down different rabbit holes and learn a lot, and then execute on something that they can call their own. They learn so much in the process, and it's interdisciplinary learning. And it's all the 21st century skills that we know they need to learn. Every single role you hire for, you gotta think it through so deeply, like what are the right skills. You never over-invest in understanding your customer. TheSpikeLab.com. Preparing yourself for the innovation economy, then check out the Spike Lab.
Welcome to Startup Hunter, also streaming on YouTube. I am here with Mr. Lloyd Nimetz of Spike Lab, which is like this incubator for high school students that helps students get more entrepreneurial. And the format of this show is, I want to know your history of entrepreneurship starting from the beginning.
Okay.
So let's go all the way back. And where were you born, Lloyd? And I'm actually interested in what your parents did.
Okay, wow. Should I start with them?
Start
It
with
all
them.
starts with the parents, right? All our problems and our other positive attributes. So yeah, my parents, born and raised in New York, in Long Island, which is where I live now, some sort of full circle. I've lived all over the world, which I guess we'll get to. But you know, a lot is based here in New York. And my father is really my role model in many ways. Like I love the man, and I've learned so much from him. His name is Nimetz. He did it all. First in his class in college, from like an immigrant family. You know, that alone was impressive. He was top of this Harvard Law School class, Rhodes Scholar, worked in the White House, clerked at the Supreme Court, chairman of his law firm, New York big law firm, you know, all those things. But he always was there for my soccer games, and you know, it's kind of somehow did it all. Read 7 newspapers every morning, and ended up switching into private equity around the end of the dot-com bust in 2001, and did a lot of tech private equity investing, but also was in diplomacy. So he was Undersecretary of State.
Holy moly!
I know.
I knew Nimetz ring up. Isn't
Yeah.
there a
well, there's
Nimetz
an aircraft carrier.
Is that named after your father?
No relation. In fact, when he was in the State Department, he almost changed our family name because it was spelled one letter different, and it became a diplomatic issue because countries were spelling it wrong. Because back then everyone knew the name Nimetz, but spelled it incorrectly. Anyway.
Should we take it right?
Yeah, let's go that way. I think, yeah, we'll just figure it out. So anyway, great man, and you know, he still advises me, and he actually did a lot of stuff in education, and you know, my focus is education, and my sister is a teacher here in New York, so very education focused, very influenced by him. And my mother is equally amazing in her own way. She sacrificed a lot to be a mom, but was one of the first women in the insurance industry back when, you know, it's kind of like Mad Men, the show. Like,
Sure.
She wasn't really allowed. And
Don Draper.
Exactly.
Peggy Olson.
And she has an MBA, and you know, taught me to, you know, to make things happen and not let anything stop me. So that's, you know, her family were not Holocaust survivors, but they left right before the Holocaust, and so very influenced by that. You know, my grandfather, her father told us, you know, all the horror stories, and told us to always keep bullion of like gold and silver for the next depression. And so I think that shaped a lot of my upbringing, I guess.
So let's talk, and you have an absolutely amazing story. Let's talk about the first thing you can remember where you're selling something, doing something entrepreneurial, and you grew up around the world.
Well, no, I grew up born in Washington, D.C., but always New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the first hustle that you had?
The snap bracelet business.
Oh, yes.
That 3rd grade in the courtyard of Collegiate School, which is in New York.
Regis?
Collegiate.
Oh, yeah.
A New York private school.
I'm aware, with the blue and orange
Yes.
sweatpants.
Yes, I'm actually going there tonight to lead running an entrepreneurship panel for the alumni.
Fantastic.
I was there for 12 years. But yeah, 3rd grade, my good friend and I, we walked to school together every day, we decided we would buy like boxes of snap bracelets for these, like basically just a piece of metal wrapped up in like some fabric that was like a thing.
Did you get them in Chinatown?
I think we did actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you do that too?
I didn't.
Do you remember
didn't
that?
sell them, but I totally remember them. They were a craze.
Yeah. Exactly. So we bought a bunch and we would just sell it in the school. People, I guess, kids are lazy and they would buy it, and I didn't really know what we were doing. I don't think we made any money, to be honest. Maybe we made a little bit of change for lunch money.
But you did prove that there was demand.
There was a lot of demand.
And maybe just your pricing model was
Yes.
not profitable.
Yeah, I think it was profitable, but if you take into account the time we spent
Yeah.
and maybe overhead, and if we did it legally, it probably wouldn't have been a great business.
Still, it's the attention that
And there were regulatory risks, which and the regulators were the administration of the school, who had to like disallow any sale of like hawking. Basically, there was like no hawking in the courtyards.
Right.
So
you flew a little too close to the sun,
yes.
which is a
Right.
great lesson for an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And what was the next thing that you remember doing in an entrepreneurial sense?
The next one that comes to mind immediately is couch potato.
What is couch potato?
So this was in college with my college freshman year roommate. People, so much waste on college campuses, and people would throw away their couches at the end of the year, just leave them on the yard.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Of course.
And then everyone, when they went back to college, always wanted couches. And so we just went around, we got a truck, went around picking up couches. At the end of the year, we found a place to store them. And then the first few days of school, we just put them all out on the lawn.
And you charge for them.
And we charged for them.
Did you make a profit?
I think it was the same lesson. I clearly don't learn my lesson. That it's actually a lot of work. You know, couches are heavy. You gotta have a truck. Where are we going here? Okay, perfect. Like, has anyone died on this show?
No one's died on the
Okay.
show. Yeah.
So yeah, it was a lot of work, and we didn't do it the next year because of it. But that, I think I was older then. That's when I learned my lesson that like you need really good margins. You need to take into account time and all the miscellaneous. A lot of, I think, young entrepreneurs and old ones too forget about all the other stuff that it takes, like shipping costs and customer support and marketing and sales. Like, huge part of a lot of businesses that I find a lot of entrepreneurs, especially engineers, forget about.
Exactly. You learned a good lesson there, and you continued through college. Were there any other side hustles that you had?
Yes. Gosh, I hope this is like a 10-hour interview. You're getting all the details.
I mean, I think the formative stories are so important.
Yeah, they're fun. Yeah, towards the end of college, one of my best friends and I, actually, he was best man to my wedding. We started this was right before the .com bust.
Yeah.
Everyone was doing startups. We wanted to be a part of it. So we created this thing called ETH Exchange. I went to Williams College.
ETH Exchange?
ETH Exchange. ETH is our name for our mascot, basically.
I see.
So it was like ETH Exchange. And it was eBay, it was really like Craigslist before people used Craigslist.
Yes.
And so it was amazing. Like, it just took off.
Now,
And
local, like, did it take
Just
off?
for Williams,
yeah.
which is a small campus, small college, and people were using it a lot.
Now,
And
was there a revenue model? Did you say like it cost
No.
$5 a post?
it was completely free.
Yes.
Everything was free. It was really like Craigslist. We didn't even know about Craigslist at that time. And part of me is like, darn, why didn't I really pursue that?
Well, why don't you think you
did-
pursued that? Did you feel like you're going to have a career and you should focus on the career, and you didn't see that there was a lot of demands? And
Yeah, we didn't have that much time because we started in the middle of senior year, and a few months later the bubble crashed, and so it was not a good time to like do anything. The idea of raising money or pursuing it. It was just the wrong time to do that. So that was the main reason. But also I think we had other plans after college. So what we did was we found someone else to take it over and continue it as like a Williams College thing. But yeah, if I had, and I believe a lot in mentoring and coaching, which
we got it.
My company now, if I had a great mentor or someone who, you know, sort of took me under their wing at that moment.
Yes.
It showed me that this was a great idea and how to take it from where it was to something bigger. You know, I really think it could have been, you know, an eBay or Craigslist or something like that.
Indeed. So, what did you do after college?
After college, I went down and, well, I got a Fulbright fellowship. So Fulbright's this usually a 1-year program in a foreign country. You have to get selected. So I did that for a year to study economic regional integration of Mercosur, the common market of the South, the European Union of the South.
By South, you mean the South of Europe?
South America, sorry.
Oh, cool.
So this is Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Paraguay. We're trying to create a common market.
Well, this feels like we're in the jungle of Brazil right now.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be nice. So I went to Argentina, which is where I also did a study abroad. I fell in love with the country, the people, the culture, and I had studied a lot of Spanish, and so I really, and my focus was actually international development. I wanted to save the world, you know, like being liberal, coming out of liberal arts degree, and I still basically like that, but I didn't know how.
Yeah.
And so my first thought was I was an economics major. I focused on poverty alleviation, economic development, developing world, and I focused on Latin America. I did an internship at the Inter-American Development Bank, which is like the World Bank, but for just the Americas, giving, you know, loans to countries to solve their issues. And man, being in that bank, to any young people listening, like these banks are not solving the issue. 90 cents on every dollar goes to intermediaries and bureaucrats, middlemen. There's so many layers that and things move so slowly. What I was doing as a young kid out of college, like people thought was amazing. And not to boost my ego, but I was not excited about that world at all. And it was a real letdown for me because I had thought that I wanted to go that direction.
Sure. Here's one question I have.
Yeah.
Having traveled abroad a lot myself, you know, the moment you go into another country, especially one that's not as wealthy as the U.S., you know, what's something that sticks out in your mind about any country you visited in Latin America? Like an interesting thing that just works differently, you know?
Yeah.
So, or just some cultural norm that's different.
Like anywhere, or in a particular country?
Well, no.
In Argentina?
Sure, that's...
Well, I have one that just comes to mind immediately, but
Yeah.
it's not Argentina.
Well, then talk about that one.
Bulgaria.
Now, did you do Bulgaria on...
I dated a girl from Bulgaria in college. It was awesome, and she took me through Bulgaria.
In college?
In college.
There you go.
Showed me things. But it's a great one because it's so basic. Like, yes and no, it's the opposite there. So when you go
when you nod your head.
When you nod your head, it's like offensive because you're like saying this no to someone.
Right.
But it's so instinctive to us.
Yeah.
And the opposite. So that one is like a really interesting opposite because I find it throws everyone off. You don't even realize, you might be talking to a Bulgarian immigrant here in the US and you might not even realize why you don't like the person, but it's because they're nodding at you while you're talking. So I thought that's a fun one.
No, you were based only in Argentina in your stint at the bank?
Yeah. No, sorry, that was in DC.
Oh yeah.
And then I did my fellowship and I researched Mercosur, which is this common market of the South. It's kind of what happened was kind of like a Brexit for today's language, but they were trying to create it, and they were close, and then it broke up.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people like me and more experienced economists and politicians who were trying to come up with analysis for why you should or shouldn't do it. What are the benefits of regional integration? And so I focused on the automotive industry because there's a lot of data around car industry to make an argument for why regional integration made sense. So it was a pretty, very economic oriented. That was what I had studied doing. But during that, the Argentine Crisis of 2001 hit. It was a while back, so a lot of people don't remember, but it was.
Haven't we already had a second crisis in the last 3 years?
Yeah, right now there's massive inflation, but it's not at the extent it was there.
Wow.
There, everything just bottomed out overnight. There was this massive devaluation.
So here's a question I have.
Yeah.
When that happens, are there any opportunities to start businesses or talk about that?
Sure.
When there's amazing, the media is just blowing things up, there's a crisis, an economic crisis. Can you still do business in an environment like that?
Absolutely. It's very cliched, but in Mandarin, the characters for opportunity and crisis are very similar.
Yeah.
So, that's my way of saying yes. Whenever there's change, there's so many opportunities. And also, it's very good for an entrepreneur because the big companies are just putting out fires. They're all distracted.
Yeah.
So if you're a small, lean organization, you have a longer runway to figure things out. You also can bring on the best talent because a lot of companies are hemorrhaging their employees, and the best people want to.
Yes, the best employees are always getting fired.
Yeah.
And there's probably no jobs, so they want something to do.
Right. So small scrappy companies can get people. If you have the money, you have a runway. The question is, if you're in the middle of raising and a crisis happens, you're probably not going to be able to close the round or whatever it may be. But if you are in a good place, and then even more than just fundraising, people obsess over fundraising as entrepreneurial success, but really I see it as just making profit. If you are providing a service, product of value, people will pay for it. If you can prove out your company during a crisis, which great companies always can because there's so much incremental value over the existing offering, that then you're set because you start growing in the worst of times, and it forces you. There's a lot of fluff in good times, people will pay for things, invest in things, but in bad times, it really has to be good to work. So
lots of the companies on this podcast have had lots of amazing success stories during the 2008 crisis. Now, staying chronologically though, let's say you finish your stint, post-college for your Fulbright.
Yeah.
What did you do next?
Yeah, so during that crisis, I had sort of one of those moments in my life where I was didn't know what to do with myself because I didn't want to pursue a life as an economist. I didn't think that, and I knew I was sort of an entrepreneur, but I didn't have that outlet in the economic institutions like the World Bank and whatnot. So I was kind of at a loss, and at that time the crisis was happening. I was in my little ivory tower researching Mercosur while people were literally pushing over cattle trucks and killing animals on the side of the road to feed their families. And I saw that. It was one of these images I have that I'll take with me for the rest of my life. People with killer eyes, just killing animals. And what am I doing? Why am I not, taking action in some way, doing something real?
So that lit
matters.
A fire under you.
Yeah, and so from there I was kind of searching for what to do, and I realized a lot of the nonprofits in Argentina had no money because of the devaluation, and the dollar was automatic, overnight 3-4 times more powerful.
Yep.
And I, coming from the US, had more ability to raise money in the US, and so I just wanted to raise some money. So I went out and.
For what purpose?
Well, I didn't know at first, and There's a great organization called the Shoko, which if anyone doesn't know about, they should check it out. They go around the world finding the best social entrepreneurs and funding them, kind of like a venture capitalist model. So I went to this organization and figured out who they had found as the best social entrepreneurs, basically the best charities in the country, and wanted to focus on child malnourishment and
in a specific country?
In Argentina, which
Yeah.
is where I was, and infant malnutrition. If kids don't get the right, nutrition in the first year of life, their brains don't form properly. They have no chance in life. So, for me, that was like, okay, it's a no-brainer. Let's find the 3 best organizations, go to the U.S., raise as much money as we can, and we raised $100,000 in a short amount of time. And while doing that, it's kind of one of these lean, I didn't know lean or any of these entrepreneurship frameworks back then, but because I was doing something, I got a lot of feedback in the process. And one of the feedback I got, one was obvious, which is that we want dollars, it's so much more powerful. But the second was that there's no bridge to raise money abroad. Turns out that if you need to raise money abroad, for little organizations at the far away from the U.S., there's a lot of administrative overhead.
Yeah.
Accountants, lawyers, tax exemption, IRS, all these things that we could do for the organizations. And they asked us if we could sort of be a bridge for them and to take on sort of like an outsourced administrative role. But then the donors, when we're talking to their donors, the donors said, well, we're not in Argentina. We don't trust these organizations. We don't know if they're doing good work. There's a lot of corruption and malfeasance.
Yeah.
And so from that, we were like, okay, well, we should create a vetting, a due diligence process, and make sure that they have this stamp of credibility or transparency, accountability, best practice. So we created an organization called Help Argentina. Not a very creative name, but it's still around about 16 years later now, and we've served as this, exactly what I said, outsourced administrative arm that makes donors feel secure that the donations are going to good organizations. We provide oversight.
So here's one thing. The infant malnourishment project, did you sort of stop focusing on that and sort of pivot to?
Yeah,
See.
exactly. I mean, we didn't, it wasn't, basically we raised the money, we gave it to the organizations as grants, and that, well, this is actually before we even had an organization, so it wasn't like a formal grant. We literally just got the money and gave it to them in a very basic way. And then from there, we were like, let's go beyond infant malnutrition. Let's do any organization. And as long as the organization complies with these best practices, we don't care the politics of it, we don't care.
So now, how are you vetting the organizations? Did you have people on the ground, doing due diligence, going to sites?
Yeah, in the early days, we weren't big or anything. So, I literally with another guy and then another guy, we went out and we made sure these projects were doing great work. We got all their data. The biggest struggle in the beginning was getting the budget, making transparent all this stuff. The whole open data movement, none of that had happened yet. And the internet was relatively new. So the idea of putting data online, making their budgets transparent, it literally took 15 months back then, at least. I don't know what it is now, but 15 months to get data about a nonprofit from the government. And we were putting it out in real time. So making it transparent, and the carrot was donations. You have access to our channel if you show us your numbers and you make it transparent. And our theory was that in the long run, if you have the right incentives in place, organizations will become more transparent, that'll build trust, and not just more transparent, but follow better practices of governance and management. And then as they do that, slowly it builds trust, and there's a virtuous cycle. The more trust, the more people are philanthropic. The more philanthropic, the bigger the sector gets, the stronger it gets. We take it for granted in the US how amazing our civil society is. We're walking by this amazing university and there's so many things here. I mean, you go to a country like Argentina, there's nothing. Not nothing, but it pales in comparison. And it's because people are donating in the U.S. more than any other country in the world.
Did your fundraising efforts show an amazing amount of growth? Was it sort of steady? Talk about the evolution of that.
Sure. We struggled in the beginning. So, I like talking about my difficulties. So, beginning,
I do too.
beginning was really hard. I was 21 years old, a foreigner, in Argentina. People didn't take me that seriously. They thought I'd get up and leave. And eventually I did. Here I am back in New York. But I actually stayed for 6 years.
In Buenos Aires?
In Buenos Aires. I thought I'd live there forever. We proved out this thing could work, but it took, the first 2 years were really slow. We had a big breakthrough when George Soros and his Open Society Foundation they bet on us as a good organization.
Now, did you have to go to some conference somewhere? Or did somebody connect you with them?
Yeah, basically we had an advisor who connected us with them, and we got a little lucky, I think. Their program officer, I think he liked us. He believed in our mission. He saw the vision, and I think it fits some of their priorities in creating open societies. To have strong democracies, you need a very strong civil society. And so it's part of their mission is to promote democracy everywhere. So it fit in with their strategy as an organization, and we got a bit of a lucky break, and we brought that money down and we put it to good use, and that gave us credibility.
Now here's a question I have. Down in Argentina, spoken a little bit about your struggles, but do you have any maybe life or death stories, or just situations where there was just an amazing amount of adversity, anything like that?
I definitely was scared in moments. I was in a bunch of, I was in poor neighborhoods, Villa Miseria, like shanty towns. I never, nothing really comes to mind as that. I don't know, New York, you can walk through a dangerous neighborhood, but I was mugged a few times.
Down in Argentina?
Yeah, with knives and
And I assume you didn't put up a fight.
No, I was always careful and never took out a lot of money, never too flashy. I wasn't usually a target. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but no kidnappings or any of the horrible stories.
But here you are being really nonchalant about getting mugged with a knife.
Yeah, I mean that was scary, but I don't know. I didn't think they never were that serious about it.
You didn't feel.
Usually it's just kids,
Wow, so that's still amazing. Now you level up interest or actual donations funneling from the Soros Foundation. How did your time in Argentina conclude?
Good question. So, I'd been there 5 years. I mean, I ended up being there 5.5 years or 6, I can't remember. And about 4 years into it, I was preaching all of this best practices in management, governance. We should run nonprofits like businesses and invest our donation money like we invest our actual money in the stock market, to optimize for return on impact. I was preaching all this, but I felt like an imposter because I didn't know that much. I was fully aware that I was young and inexperienced, and I did everything I could to read and not be fake about it. But so I thought seriously about business schools that had good social entrepreneurship programs, but I wasn't that into business school either, because I was I love what I do. I can't imagine a better job. But I ended up, and like you said, at one point, I forget when, my parents, I think before we started, my parents wanted me back. They wanted me to do something. There's other pressures in my life, obviously.
Sure, I felt that exact same pressure too.
Yeah.
And
so, I was sort of convinced, and I convinced myself too, to be honest about it, to apply to business school. I was if I don't get into the vets, I'm not going to go because I'm happy.
So Harvard or Wharton?
Harvard, I didn't apply to Wharton, although it is very good, but it's not as social entrepreneurship-y, it's more finance focused.
Yeah.
So for me, it was Harvard and Stanford.
Yeah.
I got into both and went to Stanford.
Wow. Because you're an East Coast guy. All East Coast, everyone who's on the East Coast wants to go to the West Coast, and everyone on the West Coast wants to come to New York.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know. Or they
I think it depends on the personality. I'm I literally did a personality test that my friend sent to me last weekend, and I came up adventurer. So like, I like adventures, and coming back and going to business school near New York didn't seem like an adventure. And you know, Silicon Valley, the center of entrepreneurship, really.
So what year did you come to Silicon Valley?
2006.
Okay.
And then I spent 2 years there.
So this is right around the time Facebook is starting to happen. Really,
Yeah,
very
a
interesting.
few years in. Facebook was a little more than a few years in, and the iPhone hadn't come out yet, or just about. It came out during business school. You know, so a while back.
You go to business school. Usually, the whole point of business school is to like simulate businesses. So,
Right.
like they must have made you like do experiments, business experiments.
Yeah, it's, you know, a lot of case methodology. These schools actually, if you have the initiative, you can do a lot of things that you want. So I actually created my own courses.
Now we're talking.
One was with, if you've read the book Made to Stick.
No.
It was a bestseller by this guy, Chief Heath, who was one of our professors. And it's like a marketing book on how to create sticky messaging. I loved that, so I asked him if I could do a special, basically my own course, 2-credit course with him on viral marketing. I got eBay to let me work with one of their teams and like come up with viral marketing strategies for them.
What was your pitch to eBay? I'm a business student at Stanford Business. Let me do whatever I want. Thank you. Was it like, or was there some work involved in getting that?
Find an alumni who's at eBay,
right?
So that they are willing to like champion you. Try to come off smart, like I know what I'm talking about. You know, say Chip Heath's name a lot because he's famous, and hope to get something. And they said yes. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
So you did a sort of double hack because you got a lot of attention from a professor that you liked, who's an important guy, and at the same time you got into eBay. So talk about your. What'd you learn at eBay? What'd you do?
It was a small project actually, and it turned out to be a very difficult grader.
Yeah.
So it was like my worst grade I got, but you don't really care about grades in business school anyway.
Well, but I think
Yeah.
he was being harsh on you because he probably wanted you to succeed. So
yeah, no, it was great. It was a great experience. We basically put together a few proposals on how this one project they had, which was like a marketplace for used goods in the developing world. So it had a lot to do with my background. They're trying to bring goods made by usually like poor communities or marginalized groups in the developing world and give them a marketplace to sell it in the developed world to the eBay, basically wealthier eBay customers. And so we're trying to think about how to make that more viral. But man, I haven't thought about that in many.
Did they let you loose on anything and
No.
actually put some of these ideas into practice?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, maybe they weren't good ideas. Maybe that's why I got a bad grade. But that was just an example of like things I did. But I was kind of trying to hatch like a new idea while I was there.
Okay, so what was that?
And there were opportunities for that. We ended up coming up with a company that we call Cash Cow, and it was for the Indian market.
But like India?
Yeah, so it's basically like a PayPal sort of business for India.
So had you ever been to India at that point?
Yes, I did a cool like course as an exchange with the top business school in India, and so I had some exposure.
Now, were you in Mumbai or Delhi?
Mumbai.
Yeah, I've been to Delhi.
That was cool.
It's quite different than Mumbai.
Yeah, but I mean, you get us. India's India, right? But it's actually 26 different national languages. It's really not one country. It's more of a civilization. I totally came out of my experience in Argentina thinking I can take on any country. I can do anything.
And then you see what the real third world is like in India.
Yeah. I mean, it was
Slumdog Millionaire. It's real.
Yeah, it is real, and it's a complicated. I mean, every country's complicated, but India's just at a different level. And I just wasn't as lucky, and I went into an industry that's highly regulated, especially in India, and it was too early. So basically the idea of Cash Cow was to enable the 95% of Indians who didn't have credit cards to participate in the online economy by enabling them to use cash to pay for things, and to do it at local kiosks, where just like they add money to their phones, they would go to a kiosk, give some money, they put some more money on their phone to make phone calls and text messages. So we wanted to expand that model out for any online purchase. But it was super early. So now actually you're seeing some companies IPO in this space in India. How many years later now? It's like now, 10 years later.
When somebody says early in entrepreneurship, it usually means that there's some typically limiting factor, whether it's lack of technology, something's not right. Sort of like the Google Glass. Those glasses were definitely early, amazing idea, and it's maybe just starting to happen now. So what specifically do you think was the limiting factor? Was it people didn't have the right cell phones? Talk about that.
There were a combination of things, but the biggest thing that made it too early was that there weren't enough vendors yet selling things for that community. So the only things they were selling at that time and people were buying was porn, astrology. Every day they go in and be like, is today an auspicious day to go and buy a new motorbike?
Sort of like a lottery ticket.
Kind of, yeah. Exactly. I mean, everyone has different opinions but on astrology, but I don't believe in it. And then train tickets. So like just buying the equivalent of like a subway ticket. You can buy them on there.
And what were you trying to get them to buy?
Well, we were just trying to meet the market where it's at and facilitate it in a much easier way. The margins on these things are so tiny. You need scale to get profitable, and these are markets that are not easy to reach in terms of marketing, advertising. You need a lot of money, and it's a lot of education in the market, meaning like getting them to understand what this thing is, and they're already not doing much online anyway. So it was very hard. I knew that going in, to be honest, but the other thing that we didn't know was that the equivalent of like the treasury, like the regulator for banks in India, the Reserve Bank of India, I think it's called, they set a new policy or law when I got there. Literally like a week after we got there, they're like, any of these stored value account companies have to be regulated like a bank. And that if you're a bank, you need to have cash reserves, and you need to.
Right, so it adds a whole other layer of difficulty to your dream.
Yeah. So my friend, who I was co-founding this with an Indian friend, who I met at a Stanford entrepreneurship class we took together. We were 4 people on the team coming up with this cash cow idea in a classroom in Stanford. 2 of us, me and this Indian guy, Hitesh Parashar, who's a great guy, we moved. He had a young daughter, a wife. In retrospect, now that I have 2 little daughters, like, I don't know how he went to the other side of the world and left. I mean, he sacrificed so much. Like, I love entrepreneurs who like put everything in, but like he sacrificed so much for this. And he knew the Indian market obviously much better than me, or else I wouldn't have done it. He spoke the language and everything, obviously. So we went, and it was a harsh reckoning. I have a lot of scars from, entrepreneurship scars from this. But we luckily didn't like lose a lot of, basically almost any money of investors. And
so how were you able to not lose money even though the project wasn't successful?
Because in the first 6 months, we put our own money in to do the market research. Yeah. And we had some Sequoia India, their Indian fund, this big venture capitalist, Sand Hill Road, they gave us office space and connections and like a few $1,000s really to get off the ground. No strings attached, but that's all, so it was our time and our money.
Yes.
Just to figure out if this thing was going to work. But pretty quickly, like I said, we knew things were not in a good place. So we didn't raise any money, and we tried to pivot. And when we were pivoting, we did a lot of market research in Indian shanty towns in Mumbai, literally, Slumdog Millionaire type places. just went around and talked to people and had translators help us and trying to figure out different solutions, we could pivot towards. I was a little bit desperate, but we were there, we really wanted to make it happen. And while I was there, it became very odd. One of the big takeaways, I remember we had our whiteboard with all these ideas and like problems, acute problems that we wanted to solve. One of the acute problems, they had all these workarounds in order to text each other for free. Because back then there was no WhatsApp or any of those things. They would like call their friends and hang up. I forget exactly what they did, but there's some workaround.
Yeah.
And of course WhatsApp and these others, they solved that. Became $10, $20 billion companies just by solving that problem, which we saw literally on our whiteboard. But it's all about acting. Everyone sees ideas. Every other person I meet now came up with the Uber idea. Like they had that idea.
Yeah, but did they execute
right.
it?
Or did they even do anything about it? That's the hard part.
So you're trying to pivot in India. Did anything come out of that?
No, nothing came out of it. I moved back. We gave up, which is a whole nother entrepreneurship conversation. Like when do you give up? When do you pivot? Is never an easy answer. But we went back home, so to speak, to the U.S. and
you get back home. Did you come back to New York? Back to Stanford?
Back to Stanford.
So what was next?
Next was Crew.
Crew, like rowing?
No, a company called Crew, Qrew. We broke up with my partner. Like we didn't continue to do our next thing together. He went on to his own stuff, and I started what I wanted to be originally. I wanted to be a action networking platform. It was like social network. This is the hype of when social networking and game mechanics, gamification was like the biggest thing in Silicon Valley.
Now, what year are we talking about when you worked on Crew?
This is starting 2009.
Okay.
And
that's right when Foursquare launched.
Yeah, exactly.
Dennis has been on the show.
Oh, really?
And he was talking about game mechanics and all that.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Foursquare had taken off right at that period, and everyone was trying to do that. I was really interested. So we were thinking, how do you gamify basically doing good stuff? Like environmental actions, charity, anything. So we built like a whole gamified platform where for communities, like schools or clubs or anything, any groups of people, they create their own platform. They can put in like the actions that can be taken, and you get points for doing stuff. And so people run competitions. It's like who does the most good, like 9th grade versus 10th grade versus 11th grade versus 12th grade or things like that. And they could get prizes. So we built that out and it was okay, but like not, I raised about $1 million, but it wasn't a good market. And so we pivoted we started doing it with companies, because companies were the better customers for this sort of thing, like corporate challenges, corporate social responsibility. And then while talking to the companies told us, we really like this, but we want to do this for what matters the most to us, which is performance, job performance. Every year you have annual reviews, and it's like, these are your learning goals. You got to improve on these things. You got to hit these performance goals. And so we created like a separate version of the same platform for that. So it became a performance management system that was gamified and social.
And it sounds like that worked.
It did. Our big customer that came on was Peugeot, the French automotive company.
And they also make pepper grinders.
Really?
Yeah, my pepper grinder is a Peugeot. It must be the gears.
Yeah.
Similar.
Interesting. That's all.
But they mainly make cars.
I'm in the market for a good pepper grinder.
You got to go Peugeot.
I know.
unless there's a startup pepper grinder company.
Kickstarter. There's got to be something good on there. Yeah. So Peugeot was a good customer. We got a few other ones and a bunch of small ones, and because we pivoted so much, the team wasn't that excited about it.
So you lost a lot of motivation and through that.
Yeah.
In trying to you had raised money.
Yeah.
You didn't want to be a failure. So you brought people on board for one thing, which was social, and then you start going for profit.
Right.
So what happened?
Yeah, so we had a company, is like an HR consulting firm, and they do HR sort of stuff for corporations. And they had a lot of clients of their own. They used it once with one of their clients. We were pretty happy.
Yeah.
So they asked if they would buy it.
Well, that's lucky.
And so they bought it, but it was just enough to get most of the money back to our investors. So it wasn't like a success or anything.
Right. It wasn't a multiple.
Right.
And you didn't accomplish your original goal.
Yeah.
But at least you weren't a flaming failure.
Yeah. I didn't burn any bridges. All our investors were like, next time we'll invest in you.
Well, which is really
my goal.
Which is really huge, because if you do mess up somebody's money, they're not going to be too happy in paying in helping you again.
Yeah. That's one of the things a lot of entrepreneurs forget is, especially if they take, equity capital, especially growth equity capital, like you're not as autonomous as you think you are. You're not like the dream of the entrepreneur who sets their own time and does whatever they want. You're beholden to customers. You literally have to often, like in my story here, pivot to models you're not even excited about doing. You're beholden to the investors, and you really want to serve them and make sure they're happy.
I think
if you're,
I think what you're describing is an artist.
Yeah, they're not that different. I once flirted with the idea of calling myself a CAO, Chief Artist Officer. Well, I don't know why. It was kind of random, but like it stuck in my mind because I think there's a lot of creativity to the entrepreneurial process.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
As long as you stay within a few parameters,
right.
Whether it's a single bottom line or a triple bottom line, or if you're a nonprofit, that's a whole other ball game. So you sold Crew, you found an exit. What was next?
So after Crew, I moved to New York with my to-be wife, and that was 4 years ago, and I convinced one of my buddies, Sharif Bichet, who had just founded Dev Bootcamp. I convinced him to let me open Dev Bootcamp New York and help, on the management team. So Dev Bootcamp was the first coding bootcamp. These coding schools. New York, we have Flatiron and General Assembly are the most famous here. We were the first Silicon Valley and opened up all over, basically. So I helped with that process. I actually went through the bootcamp myself in the beginning.
And did you quit? Was it not for you?
No, I loved it. It was awesome. We ended up selling to Kaplan. The big test prep, Kaplan University.
Interesting, didn't know that.
I was actually fighting that sale because I didn't believe Kaplan was the right company for us. We were all about changing the system and changing education and doing things differently, and Kaplan kind of they don't think that from inside, but really they represent the old way of doing things.
Sure.
And sure enough, they drove it into the ground, or I don't know if they did, but it ended up not doing that well, and they closed it down last December.
Wow.
But I left a few months after the acquisition and joined a really cool nonprofit that everyone should know about, but they don't yet, called 4.0 Schools, which was similarly trying to shake things up in K-12 education in the US. They're funded by the biggest education funders in the world, Gates Foundation, Walton Family Foundation, Broad Foundation, some of the richest families that care a lot about education. And their mandate was and still is to accelerate educational reform in the US. Get our kids to be taught better. Innovation in education space is disastrous. It's worse than the financial industry. Things do not innovate quickly. And so they've been doing a lot of things. So they asked me to come on and run their startup incubator for edupreneurs, for entrepreneurs who are doing education ventures. So these were new school models that are really cool, after school, ed tech, you name it. We had it all.
And this based here in New York?
It was actually based in New Orleans.
Oh, wow.
And we opened an office in New York, but I was traveling back and forth. And
why New Orleans? I never really see New Orleans as, I see it as an arts center, but not necessarily a business center.
Yeah, it has an interesting education history, which I won't get into too much, but basically after Katrina, they closed down the whole public school system.
Yeah.
It was like a reboot. And they rebooted with charter schools. And it was like this pilot test bed, and all the best educators in the country, or a lot of them, flocked to New Orleans in order to be a part of this, what was the potential of, if we could do it in New Orleans, we can do it anywhere. And so one of the people who flocked there was Matt Candler, who's founder of 4.0 Schools, who was one of the key people who grew KIP, which is one of the big original charter school networks. Really good guy, and I was very convinced by him and his whole team. And so I was excited to do that and run an incubator. And part of me was already starting to be very, very excited about teaching entrepreneurship. How do you teach entrepreneurship? I think startup incubators are where the best teaching of it are happening, because it's so much on the line. Like, these people are committing their lives, starting a venture, they go to an incubator to get that help. And the incubators, to provide value, they have to educate, they have to support, but it's not traditional education, it's helping them really do something in the world.
Isn't that the point of education, to help you really do something in the world?
Well, no, I mean, we have another hour to talk about this, but like, no, if you talk to educators, what is education? It's teaching subjects. It's making sure that they have, if you really look at what they're held accountable to.
Yes.
Which is what really drives them day to day. It's not, are they teaching kids execution skills? Are they teaching them creativity and planning? Great teachers are doing that. There are plenty of great teachers doing that, like my sister, but they have to go above and beyond.
Yes.
And
because they have to meet their test scores. If they don't get the test scores, they probably get fired.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and there's so many chains and handcuffs and on teachers in the public, in all education systems, the schedule, everything. So I didn't want to go into the education system. I wanted to, basically fast forwarding to the Spike Lab is, as I was doing, teaching entrepreneurship to these amazing entrepreneurs, I realized, like, how do you teach this to high schoolers at a key age when, if you get it then, you get it for life?
Now, what was the impetus behind that? Did you draw on like a personal problem? Like, did you feel growing up you didn't have enough focus on entrepreneurship?
Yes, absolutely. That was a big part of it. Like, I've been very fortunate. I went to, I told you, collegiate school. I went to Williams College. I went to Stanford Business. Like, these are I wrote in one of my blog posts, I'm like one of the most overeducated people. And no one taught me these things. I mean, I got it, so I was taught along the way, and I had a bit of it probably in my blood, but like, you can teach these things.
Yes,
absolutely. You can definitely, project-based learning and not like necessarily reading it, but like these, like anything, you can be taught, you can be motivated, inspired.
Well, one of the reasons I do this show is because I think entrepreneurship is a skill, and hopefully these episodes accelerate people and guide them in the right direction.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's so needed. And so we need to do a better job of that. And I also think we need to put purpose back at the center of education. And a good entrepreneur, like I was talking about earlier, when we pivoted away during Crew, when we pivoted away from something that I loved, I couldn't do that. I wasn't as good at it. And so for teenagers, like, we're forcing all this stuff down their throat that they should learn math. I'm not saying get rid of all of that, but spend much more, like way more time helping them find what sparks that passion for them, and let them pursue it and explore it and fail, and make things in the world that make them feel like they matter. There's nothing like a kid coming up with an idea, making it real, which is hard, really hard, getting people to buy it or use it or attend an event. The satisfaction they get out of that, the sense of like mattering in the world, it's like huge, and it changes their mindset forever.
Now, are you doing New York City students only at Spike Lab?
No, so we actually started in Taiwan,
yeah,
which is where my wife is from, and where the need is a little more acute because their education system is even worse. It's more rote memorization. And the other thing about our model, because I was very hesitant to go out and just start an entrepreneurship program, because the reality is they're kind of an afterthought. Like, people like the idea, but when it comes down to it, they're an after-school program, maybe a program in a school for a semester, but their kids are so busy, it becomes an afterthought. And I didn't want to start something that was an afterthought. I wanted it to be one of the most important things in their life at that time.
So how do you accomplish that? And then kids they still have to be in school. So how do you wrestle with that?
Yeah.
Potential conflict?
We bundled it together with college admissions. Which everyone knows now, with all the scandals, that like people are crazy, they'll do anything to get into the top schools. And so for me, it's like, let's jujitsu all that negativity into something really positive. These schools want kids who have found purpose in life, who will pursue and do uncommon, extraordinary things. The incentives are actually there to do that.
So did you know the right person in Taiwan, did you start at one school?
Well, a few schools. Yeah, we basically networked our way into some school leaders, but we worked directly with families, not with schools. And just like kind of a tutoring program, one-on-one tutoring. So we're like a one-on-one coaching, entrepreneur coaching for high schoolers, and we help them come up with their spike, which is like this idea of a purpose-based big endeavor, big project, where they take an idea and launch it, and it has impact in the world.
Now, do they pay you?
They pay us. So the family pays us for the coaching, just like you'd pay a tutor, and we have, the idea is we have the best coaches. They're all experienced entrepreneurs like me, but they're also knowledgeable about college admissions, and they can support that as well. And so we have a very structured, just like an incubator would, a structured entrepreneurship curriculum. But that's I took everything I've been doing. I took the Startup Garage class at Stanford and the D-School class, which I did, and everything else, as well as purpose development curriculum, which is, most people don't know about it, but there's a lot of cool things happening, and how do you develop a sense of purpose in people? And we bundle that all together into something that's age appropriate, and it's working.
Before you get into your success, like an incubator, do you invest or take a cut?
No, and almost none of these are making profit. Some of them are very business-oriented kids, and that's their passion. But a lot of them are more social ventures or school projects, academic projects. For example, one of our kids, through our process, became focused and really excited about prisoner of war camps in Taiwan, World War II prisoner of war camps, Japanese camps of American prisoners and British. And she ended up creating a digital archive, the only digital archives of artifacts from those camps. So there's no business there, nothing to invest in, and we wouldn't invest anyway. It's because the exit is not, it's not about building a backable business, investable business. It's more about the learning and about building something that has impact of any kind. So one of our students was really into writing. She created like a really good, really cool writing club with super serious kids from all over the world who met weekly, and then they co-authored and published a book together.
So how do you juggle your time between Taiwan and here, or?
Yeah, well, my co-founder lives in Taiwan, and we have coaches sort of spread out, some there, some here.
And is it only, are you localized only to New York and Taiwan?
No, so we're actually just a new student from Mallorca, Spain, and potential student from Morocco, but mainly in East Asia. So Taiwan, Hong Kong, we're starting to expand in China, and then the US. So.
And how many people are on your staff?
We're 5 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had 77 students total. Our coaches are not allowed to take more than 12 students at a time. It's like super personalized, and it's pretty expensive. It's a very expensive program to afford.
Yes.
Which is whole nother conversation.
And how long have you been at Spike Lab?
Almost 3 years now.
What have you learned in that process? What did you do wrong? What have you
good question.
Improved?
The biggest thing was the importance of purpose. Like, it was always something I cared about, but it wasn't as central to our curriculum, because I started a little more thinking it was like going to be more of like a startup incubator model, but translated to high school kids, which it is. But very quickly we realized that it's not, like, even if you fail, and a lot of kids don't end up achieving the amount of success and impact that they wanted, if you're doing something, if you find purpose in what you're doing and you feel like it really matters, then that's way more important. You know, to see that spark and, I don't know, the sense of confidence, self-worth go up, like, and that comes from a sense of purpose. So spending more time up front developing that out, it sounds obvious maybe, but we didn't do enough of that up front.
So what's your big vision for Spike Lab? Do you want to like super scale it across the world? Like, you only have 5 people. Like, do you want to be at 50 people? Like, what are you? Or are you trying to stay small?
No, I mean, so I'm self-funding it. I do not want, at least now, to raise any equity capital. I think very few education models work out well with growth equity capital, because you're beholden to a certain level of growth that isn't good in education. So that's all preachy. But basically, I'm self-funding it, so I don't have to grow as fast. But I do want to grow. I want to be international. I want to have the best coaches. But on the missions, so like this year, we want to have 100 full-time students at a time. Right now, we're at about 20. So, we want to grow a lot this year. More coaches, more students. But I think the most important is just proving out this model that you can teach. It almost sounds obvious maybe to you and me, like people in this entrepreneurship bubble, that we get it, we're dedicated to it. But the fact that most people don't get that if you let teenagers pick what they want to focus on, and you trust them that they're going to be serious and explore it, or go down different rabbit holes and learn a lot, and then execute on something that they can call their own, they learn so much in the process. And it's interdisciplinary learning, and it's all the 21st century skills that we know they need to learn. Like, for me, that's obvious. It's not really happening. So like, proving this out at the highest level with families that can afford it, with coaches who can, they're paid a lot and they can handle experimentation we're doing.
I think your early lessons with the snap bracelets really proved to you need to have good margins. And then once you do have those, you can start thinking about, going to the masses.
And I'm getting more practical maybe as I get older. Like, I think education, the way the educational system works, for better or worse, probably worse, is it's very top down. People at the top have the power to make changes, and so our theory of change is, let's prove it out on our own with some of the more influential families whose kids go to the best schools, get the best schools interested. We've done some consulting for the schools. We've already done some teacher training for some of the top schools. Get the leadership in these top private schools, boarding schools, to totally buy in. And then it starts to seep into thought leaders and policy changes, and then it'll go to superintendents and then down into the system, and hopefully some version of what we're doing will have a scalable impact. But we won't see all of, we're not going to make money off of all of that, but at least the impact will be there.
All right, so I know we could go on for a long time. It's super interesting. I actually have to get to sign language class. Final question, and this is my new signature question.
Nice.
So, how do you think you've grown as an entrepreneur? And I'll just leave it at that.
It's hard to pick things. So, I'll pick the first two that come to mind. One is just people. Sounds obvious, but you gotta get the people part right in terms of who your customer is and who your team is. And every single role you hire for, you gotta think it through so deeply. Like, what are the right skills? And hire slowly, fire quickly. A lot of people say that, and it's just really true. It's actually very hard to do, because these are people, and if you care about people, you don't want to fire them quickly. But I must say, that's been one of my biggest mistakes And in the end, it's not kind to them because people who aren't in the right role, with all the pressure of the startup pressure that it's not an enjoyable experience. So basically firing faster and hiring more slowly, and how to do that, and being a little more sucking up my want to everyone to like me and just like do what's right for the organization. I think that was one of the hardest things I still struggle with. Literally today I'm talking to my co-founder about it a little bit. And then the other is empathy, which goes back to people, your customer. Like, you never over-invest in understanding your customer and what they're feeling, what they want. And I find that I've just gotten a lot better at that. When in the beginning, I think I got a little lucky with Help Argentina because, I don't know, it just kind of worked. You know, when I went to India, it didn't work at all. And so, I just got better at understanding the customer. I think those are the two biggest things.
Well, thank you so much, Lloyd, for coming on the show.
No, thank you. This was really fun.
We could have spent another 10 hours going into all different directions.
Yeah,
And
it's like therapy for me.
Maybe I should charge people to be on the show.
You should charge entrepreneurs to be on the show. Because we're always talking about this stuff, so
yeah,
you'll listen.
So thanks. Go check out, is it Spikelab?
thespikelab.com.
You can sign up yourself if you're a teenager. No, is it age limit? You have to be.
Yeah, if you're a teenager from 9th to 11th grade, or your kids are, then and you're ambitious, you want to get into a top college, but your heart is in an entrepreneurial, preparing yourself for the innovation economy, then check out the Spike Lab.